Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Friday, November 15th, 2024, halfway through November, I guess. And, oh no, because I guess at this point I'd rather just stay in November forever and wait the whole thing out and just let 4 years pass and then say, all right, it's December, it's Christmas, and Trump isn't president anymore. But no magical time machine. Instead, time marches on, and it being Friday, I'm on my own, facing 2 hours to cram in everything that I've wanted to tell you probably for the past 6 to 8 weeks. But of course, more news keeps getting piled on top of it. Since we last spoke, I guess it was just yesterday that we were wondering aloud, I think. I might have been wondering this to myself. You never know. Was Trump done? Oh no, I think I mentioned this with Greg. Was Trump done with RFK Jr.? He doesn't seem to be rushing his nomination out the same way that he did with Elon Musk, even though he didn't actually nominate him to anything that actually exists or will exist. But you get the idea. He had made it plain that he would play some role in the administration, which is, of course, all by itself a huge issue of corruption, which, you know, others have explored, and we may not get a chance to explore here yet, but we'll just, as a baseline, assume that this is the case. There's really no way you involve the world's richest man in this way, and with so many government contracts on top of it all, and of course, megalomaniac who just can't be satisfied with anything, and already thinks he's co-president, or maybe even the regular president. And Trump is just along for the ride. But at any rate, we were wondering whether he was like, well, I've been elected. I don't need RFK Jr. anymore. That guy's a crackpot anyway. Screw him. Let's toss him aside. But no. So yesterday it was announced-ish, sort of, maybe, possibly, that he was going to take over as Secretary of Health and Human Services. You know, the nightmare role for him. And so lots of people reminding us, well, he's not just an outside-the-box thinker. He's a dangerous crackpot and will be pushing for dumb things like, let's forbid all vaccines because vaccines are terrible for you, in his opinion. And so everybody should get measles and mumps and rubella and whooping cough and God knows what else. Not to mention, of course, any pandemics that might come sweeping across the globe again. And it was only maybe the only thing that's kind of recognized outside of MAGA circles as an accomplishment of the Trump administration, the race to develop and bring out those vaccines, would be out the door. I think I see people doing studies of various kinds, and I'm not certain what the parameters are or whether they're trustworthy or not. But it certainly seems clear that, well, if we hadn't had vaccines, say, or developed the vaccines at all, someone else might have developed them, of course, but seems like millions of more people would be dead if that were the case. Anyway, much more happening on other fronts. Of course, we're meant to be distracted by various other nominations that have been put forward in the last couple of days. My mailbox is filling up with news about all of them, including, of course, Matt Gaetz. More on Tulsi Gabbard. Maybe we dive right in today. And I've got, when things get tough and if the strain is getting to me, we've got a listener contribution from a new source today. And I guess if I just come right out and say who the source is, then I feel maybe my obligation to myself to come back and remember to play Brian Henry's submission today. It's on topic, certainly, about Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. Who are, clearly on topic for the day, with an interesting dynamic between the two of them. And I guess nobody really understands the dynamic either, because there are competing theories about how these guys see one another and how these guys interact with one another. And ordinarily that's not important, except that they bought the government. So maybe we want to find out what that's all about. Let's start with some of the harder news. that we've put aside here. Politico, of course, is the one that I saw first reporting that Kennedy would be getting the nod at HHS. We've had all sorts of confirmations since then, but they were the first ones out with the Trump to select. They heard Trump to select Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead HHS. I'll just let them set the tone here. Meredith McGraw and Chelsea Ceruzzo wrote this piece for Politico, which starts out this way. President-elect Donald Trump will nominate former presidential candidate and anti-vaccine activist Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. The pick, which will roil many public health experts, whom, of course, Kennedy plans to fire, comes after Trump promised to let Kennedy, quote, go wild, unquote, with health and food policy in his administration after Kennedy dropped his own presidential bid, sort of, kind of, to endorse the now president-elect. It's also a sign of the opening Trump sees after he scored a decisive electoral victory, and it wasn't that decisive, as it turns out. I mean, much more decisive among electoral votes, certainly, than actual votes. Anyway, and Republicans won a comfortable majority in the Senate. And I guess that is relatively comfortable in the Senate. So, I mean, I don't know if I really want to occupy the time with reading all the way through this. You may remember that we read that list of items that just days before the election, or maybe days after the election, he insisted he would be targeting, of course, to include Gatorade, mayonnaise, standard favorites. I think Doritos or something was on the list as well. But, he's talked extensively about essentially wrecking the global vaccination regime, of course. So we all knew that was coming. What we didn't know that Gatorade and mayonnaise were on the list. And I guess FDA now under his jurisdiction as well. So I don't know what to tell you. Cross your fingers on that one. Certainly get your vaccinations and get the boosters for things that you need, not just COVID vaccinations. Those, I imagine, are going away forever. And we'll end up back right in the middle of it. And if any of these pandemic flus that are potential pandemic flus that they're watching break out, sorry, might not be able to vaccinate you for, really forever. Who knows how badly he damages the vaccine infrastructure. For people who watch the stock market, all the vaccine producers' stocks, of course, now in the toilet because most of the government subsidies they depend upon to develop new vaccines will be drying up and disappearing. Possibly forever. He may just do so much damage to the infrastructure that it can't be rebuilt once Trump is no longer president, if that's ever a thing that happens. Anyway, another pick or two or three are out there. Of course, there's the Matt Gaetz pick to make him Attorney General. There was another one. There's another two in DOJ, but the first of them I feel like I need to scroll back and find from yesterday just so I get the name right because I've already forgotten. But I can tell you what commentators on the subject had to say, and including Katie Fang. Who's Katie Fang? Katie Fang is the host of the Katie Fang Show. So, for those of you familiar, and there might be some of you who are familiar because the show it's not like this fake show. It's on MSNBC, which is television, and so therefore real. Katie Fang, the two others, well-known host. I would know her very well, too, if I watched the show, and it's probably quality programming, but I don't. But she's had a great point here, so I don't know, turn on the show. This is grabbing, not my preferred style, grabbing a screenshot of a Trump-Vance online press release. But what are you going to do? That's the source of information you got as a mainstream reporter here. And the word here is of the announcement, which Donald J. Trump is pleased to make, that Dean of, I don't remember which, law school, John Sauer, will serve as Solicitor General of the United States in my administration. Solicitor General, the person who represents the United States government position as a whole in Supreme Court arguments, essentially. Right? So if somebody's suing if someone's suing HHS, like Hellman's, Joe Hellman, I don't know if there is, Tim Hellman, the owner of Hellman's Mayonnaise, were to sue the United States government for banning his fabulous mayonnaise, or Duke and his fabulous mayonnaise, perhaps, whoever that is, you would find on the other side of the room representing the United States government the Solicitor General in very important cases. And I guess the mayonnaise case would be a top level case for this administration. John Sauer now going to be that Solicitor General. Who is John Sauer? Well, in Trump's telling, he is a deeply accomplished, masterful appellate attorney. I'm not even going to try to pretend to you that Trump wrote this thing with the Trump voice. He clerked for Scalia, served as Solicitor General of Missouri for 6 years, if that gives you an indication. He's got extensive experience practicing before the U.S. Supreme Court, and that's good, because many of the other appointments that he's made have no experience in anything. So there's at least that. Most recently, John was the lead counsel representing me in the Supreme Court in Trump versus the United States, winning a historic victory. It's an historic victory, but that's archaic. No one does that anymore. Winning an historic victory on presidential immunity, which was the key to defeating the unconstitutional campaign of lawfare against me. And now it's starting to take on his voice. And the entire MAGA movement. John was a Rhodes Scholar, graduated from Duke University. They have their own mayonnaise. It's not really made at Duke, but that's a popular brand. Oxford University, no mayonnaise brand of their own as far as I know. And is a magna cum laude graduate of Harvard Law School. Does the law school do the Latin honors? I don't know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. You get a free mayonnaise, I guess, if you are a top graduate. Yada yada, MAGA, et cetera, et cetera. John Sauer, Katie Fang reminds us, says this is the guy who told the United States Supreme Court that the president could dispatch SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political opponent and have immunity when doing so. That was the hypothetical that was posed to him. And he said, oh, yeah, I realize this is a ridiculous position to take, but the logic of our pleadings requires it. But, yeah, I'll be the guy who stands in front of the United States Supreme Court and says, yep, president can absolutely assassinate his opponent in the election with SEAL Team 6 or SEAL Team 5, if you wish. Really doesn't even matter. Send Elon Musk. That will do the trick. Ask Mr. Bonesaw to take care of it. Those things all A-OK by John Sauer, and now he'll be representing the United States before the Supreme Court and I guess asking for more handouts in that respect. Please give me another stupid ruling that I can flaunt in favor of Donald Trump. So that's not a great one. Back in pocket, we also have news of another top DOJ appointment. Trump is picking Todd Blanche, his defense lawyer, to be Deputy Attorney General. That's in the New York Times, so when they talk about him in the subheader, they refer to him as Mr. Blanche, and probably throughout the article as well. A supervising federal prosecutor in Manhattan, formerly, oversaw the president-elect's legal defense against multiple indictments because the guy's been indicted multiple times. Devlin Barrett is the reporter for this piece. President-elect Donald Trump said on Thursday he'd named Todd Blanche, a lawyer who oversaw his defense against multiple indictments, to become the number 2 official at the Justice Department. And, of course, in the Trump administration, all the Department of Justice officials will be number 2s, and you can count on that. The selection of Mr. Blanche, a former prosecutor in Manhattan, as the Deputy Attorney General serves as an extraordinary rebuke to the criminal cases against Mr. Trump, in a way that somehow the Solicitor General pick doesn't. But a day earlier, the president chose Matt Gaetz, you know who that is, to become Attorney General. if confirmed as Deputy Attorney General. And, of course, he will be, because some of the other articles we have in store for you and some of the things we've mentioned along the way include the fact that there will be, well, Trump has a plan to avoid confirmation for anybody that he thinks won't make it all the way through. Just as I told you a couple of weeks ago, and I've got another update article claiming the same thing. I don't know if there's any more news to it, but also none of them are going to go through background checks or security clearances because they wouldn't be able to pass those. So we're just, with those, then it's not that they're not going to do them. It's that they're going to say, well, the FBI won't be responsible for doing it. We're going to hire outside private investigators and pay them. Give me a report that says this guy is okay. Here's some money. Here's the report. Boom. Done. All right. So Matt Gaetz, Attorney General, if confirmed, or whatever you would call it, as Deputy Attorney General, Blanche would be responsible for supervising the day-to-day operations of a department that Mr. Trump has repeatedly assailed. And he may be assailed as well. Who knows? You never know. Others on Trump's legal team are also in line to receive top assignments. Emil Bove, I don't remember which one, who did what in his various cases. He was under so many indictments and sued in so many places, it's hard to keep track. Emil Bove will be Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General. The DOJ has, I think, more, well, they get in the newspaper more often, but they seem to have more assistants, deputies, principal, associate deputies than just about any other department. Or at least those people get more attention anyway. And also, of course, D. John Sauer. I thought he was the dean of a law school somewhere, but maybe he is Dean John Sauer, total jackass and not dean of any school, but just actually named dean, but he doesn't like to use it. Maybe because it's so confusing and people think he's the dean of the law school. I don't know. So here he's referred to as D. John Sauer, who represented Trump before the Supreme Court in arguing that the former president was entitled to broad immunity, to put it mildly, as Solicitor General. In announcing his selection of Blanche, Trump pointed to his years as a supervising federal prosecutor in the SDNY, his past clerkships, standard stuff that you would point to. Let's see. He says some nice things about him, but we don't care what those are. The choice underscores Mr. Blanche's swift transformation and the big gamble he made in taking on Mr. Trump as a client. More than a year ago, he was a registered Democrat in New York and a partner at a prestigious law firm on Wall Street. This now rings a bell. I remember him risking it all to take on this very terrible case. And I think he was the one he was the, I guess, lead counsel in the 34 convictions for which Trump is supposed to be facing sentencing in about a week and a half, but I guess he won't be. And yeah, now I remember all these articles like, wow, you were going to risk the whole, prestigious white shoe law firm partnership thing for this. And I mean, I guess there's a big payoff. He got a government job, but it's not attorney general and it's not assistant attorney general. It's principal deputy assistant attorney general. Is that worth it? Well, that's up to him, I guess. Blanche defended Trump in 3 of the criminal cases against him, including in Florida over his handling of classified documents in Florida. Dismissed. Can't complain about that if you're Trump. In Washington, regarding his efforts to subvert the 2020 election, still ongoing but about to be dropped. Can't complain about that if you're Trump. And in Manhattan for a hush money payment to a porn actress. Convicted on 34 counts. But that'll be dropped too. Can't complain if you're Trump, but Trump will complain bitterly anyway. In fact, he complained bitterly about all 3 of them, so it doesn't even make a difference. The case in New York ended in Trump's conviction on all 34 counts of falsifying business records to cover up a sex scandal, making him the first former president to be branded a felon. I like that pronunciation of it. We'll use that. As Trump's lead lawyer in that trial, Blanche forged a unique connection with the president-elect. For weeks inside a criminal courthouse, Trump farted and slept next to Mr. Blanche, so they're practically married. Now that would be the way you conclude this article, but no. Although it does hint at it. For weeks inside a criminal courthouse, Mr. Trump and Mr. Blanche sat inches apart. And you know what that means. and often whispering to each other during long days of legal arguments and testimony. Wake up, or pull my finger, or various sweet nothings that they whispered to each other during the weeks of the trial. Anyway, more yada yada, I guess. Let's see. Is there more that we actually need to add to this? A little bit of background to him. Blanche first joined the Southern District as a paralegal in 1999, attending Brooklyn Law School at night. Hey, all right. That's nice. He returned a few years later, this time as a prosecutor, where he largely handled violent crimes cases in Manhattan and eventually ascended to supervise that work. After leaving the prosecutor's office, he became a defense lawyer in private practice. Blanche has represented other members of Trump's circle, including Paul Manafort. He went to jail but got himself a pardon, probably thanks to Blanche. His one-time campaign chairman, that's Manafort, and Boris Epstein, an advisor. What do you know? Also convicted. And so part of the reason that he won't be doing an FBI background check this time. He also managed somehow, after graduating from Brooklyn Law School at night, to clerk for Antonin Scalia, which is very unusual. It's usually all top Ivy League names that get selected for those jobs. He handled appellate matters for Mr. Trump, including his challenge to a gag order imposed on him in the election case in Washington. And, what else can I tell you about this? We'll skip out of this one and try and bring you a couple other pieces from Out of Pocket for your consideration. But, jump back to, not to my saves, but to everything else. All right. Let's see. I mentioned to you, let's throw this one in here before we go to the break, the CNN update on the FBI background check thing. Just to remind you, Trump's team skips FBI background checks for some cabinet picks, say Evan Perez, Zachary Cohen, Holmes, Librand, and Kristen Holmes on CNN. Pictures of the piece, illustrating the piece of Matt Gaetz and Tulsi Gabbard. Two people who would very much like to bypass the FBI background check system. President-elect Donald Trump's transition team is bypassing traditional FBI background checks for at least some of his cabinet picks, while using private companies to conduct vetting of potential candidates for administration jobs. People close to the transition planning say. I'm going to start going with the pronunciation of his cabinet picks at this point, like nut picking, but for a cabinet. Anyway, Trump and his allies also believe the FBI system is slow and plagued with issues, like they'll find out that you're a spy. That could stymie the president-elect's plan to quickly begin the work of implementing his agenda. People briefed on the plans said. Critics said the intrusive background checks, they're supposed to be, sometimes turn up embarrassing information used to inflict political damage, which is the point of them. If you turn them up before, say, the Russians or somebody else who wants to embarrass or manipulate these high-ranking government officials, if they find it and they can use it to inflict political damage, but instead opt not to in exchange for preferential treatment in some way, that's the reason you discover those things. And the political damage is, we say that person should not serve, because if they do, who knows what else we haven't discovered that they might be bribed with, or they're just morally unfit for the task. One or the other will do. Anyway, discussions come as Trump has floated several controversial choices for high-level positions in the U.S. government, including Matt Gaetz for Attorney General, Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence. Ultimately, the president has the final authority on several things, including one, who he nominates and decides to share intelligence with, regardless of the established protocol set in the wake of that little event we like to call World War II. Things kind of changed at that point, and we've been in a different kind of structure of government since then. Anyway, since then, we use this system to make sure that those selections don't have, unknown foreign ties or other issues that could raise national security concerns. But circumventing background checks would be bucking a long-established norm in Washington. Doesn't break any laws, just bucks a norm. Norm bucker. Anyway, it also reflects Trump's deep mistrust of the national security establishment. It actually demonstrates Trump's deep trust in the national security establishment in the sense that they're really pretty good. They're going to find this dirt. You don't actually even have to be good to find the dirt on these guys. They'll find it. They'll correctly identify it. They'll tell everybody what it is. We'll be in trouble. That's why I don't trust them. But beyond that, he thinks they also make up all their intelligence to harm him. That's what the whole world revolves around him. So he has a deep mistrust of the national security establishment, which he derides as the deep state. Everybody's the deep state, of course. If you give him a parking ticket, that's the deep state. Sources say he has privately questioned the need for law enforcement background checks. Dan Meyer, the national security attorney in Washington, D.C., said the incoming Trump administration, quote, doesn't want harmony. They don't want the FBI to coordinate a norm, these checks, and they want to hammer the norm, he said. Some of Trump's advisors began circulating a memo before the election urging him to bypass the traditional background check process for some of his appointees. A source briefed on the memo told CNN, I've been briefed on the memo by somebody else's reporting. Could have talked to me. Instead of using law enforcement, the memo proposed hiring private researchers who could move more quickly to perform background checks, but not just move more quickly, they could move more favorably. For instance, you could just say, if there's something in this hand, and if I took it out of my hand and put it in your hand, it would make you say, look at all these violations of national security and international law. Forget what they are. I'm thinking about what's in this hand. If we just pay enough, will you clear the people? I mean, is that not the deal? I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's never been done before, and I'm sure if it's done now, it'll be done corruptly.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. There's so much more. Just crossing the transom now as I'm watching the social media. I guess Kennedy making his plans clearer, or at least, well, I should say, he's saying words about his plans. Whether that's making his plans clearer or not, I don't know. I think he's trying to float a new slogan for himself of instead of MAGA, Make America Great Again, he's going to MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, you see. And it's interesting. And I mean, he knows, I think, well enough to lead with the stuff like, well, I'm going to be promoting healthy eating, which a lot of people can get behind, including even Democrats can get excited about that one. But as people are pointing out, I mean, it's pretty obvious if you give it any thought, right? I see somebody mentioning here, I have a friend who was so mad that Michelle Obama took cookies out of public school lunches, but is so happy that Kennedy is going to be making us eat healthier. They're all crazy. And essentially, yeah, that's kind of where we stand. If a Republican says, I'm going to force you all to eat healthy, yay, thank God. He's going to save us all from communism somehow by being stronger and healthier. But when Michelle Obama says, hey, eat some vegetables, don't put cookies in school lunches, take the soda machines out of schools. Communism, she's telling us what to eat. That's crazy. I mean, we've already been over this a couple weeks ago. We mentioned, didn't it used to be supposedly the Republican nightmare that it was the Democrats, if they got in control of government, they were the ones who were going to be controlling the size of our sodas. They're going to outlaw big gulps at 7-Eleven. That's tyranny. Okay. Well, actually now a Republican administration is saying it. Oh, it's actually freedom. Well, to no one's surprise, I'm sure. All right. So where were we? We were talking about the Trump plans to skip the background checks. Anything new in this one? I mean, I guess not. So we could sort of just say, all right, remember that's kind of where we stand with all of this. Some of Trump's advisors began circulating this memo before the election urging him to bypass traditional background checks, that some private researcher would give you better results, essentially. President-elect could always, however, decide to eventually submit names to the FBI, I guess if he thinks that's worth trying or worth doing for some people. Some of Trump's picks for roles in the administration could run into problems during a background check, posing potential hurdles during the confirmation process. Matt Gaetz, for instance, mired for years in Justice Department and House ethics investigations related to sex trafficking. The Justice Department declined to charge Gaetz, and the House ethics probe, days away from being completed, well, it was completed, days away from having its report released, was effectively ended when the Florida congressman resigned his seat this week. Gaetz has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, but everybody should, no one should lose sight of the fact that ordinarily these members who are appointed to roles in an administration, you stay in your job until you're confirmed, lest anything go wrong, and then resign the job before beginning the new one. But for some strange reason, Matt Gaetz did it totally backwards. Gabbard, meanwhile, has frequently appeared to take positions, let's say, as they do here, more favorable to foreign leaders, widely considered not just American adversaries, but in some cases brutal dictators, including the presidents of Syria and Russia, raising questions from allies and critics alike. Now, there is a grand American tradition of siding with brutal dictators for convenient reasons, but you're supposed to stay on the same page as the government on that one and not side with the other brutal dictators who are on the naughty list, you see. That's how we tell which side you're on. Is that a great system? No, it's not. Has it served us relatively well, or at least help us organize, our thoughts about what we're doing foreign policy-wise? Yes. So, anyway, Gabbard notably met with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in Syria in 2017 and said in 2019 that he was not an enemy of the United States. The United States thinks differently about that one. In early 2022, she echoed Russian President Vladimir Putin's rationale for the country's invasion of Ukraine, pinning the blame not on Moscow but on the Biden administration's failure to acknowledge Russia's legitimate security concerns regarding Ukraine's becoming a member of NATO, a popular strain of thought in some right-wing circles. In addition to the confirmation process, FBI background checks are used to vet nominees for security clearance, which an attorney general nominee is required to have to do the job. As president, Trump could also bypass that process and order Gaetz to be granted a security clearance, as he did in his first term to grant a clearance to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, after the approval languished amid questions about potential conflicts of interest. That is to say, he failed the FBI security clearance background check, and he said, never mind, clear him anyway. So he does have that power. Trump ordered clearances to be granted to about 25 people whose applications were initially denied for possible national security concerns, CNN previously reported. Ordinarily, you get yourself impeached for stuff like that. If Gaetz does not participate in the vetting process, the FBI could still try to do a basic investigation at the request of the Senate. But one source familiar with the process noted that it is difficult to collect some data without his consent, because there's a rule of law and all that for another couple of weeks. U.S. officials are still waiting for the Trump transition team to submit a list of names, including those under consideration for cabinet-level roles, to be formally vetted for security clearances. Trump's team has to date resisted participating in the formal transition process, which includes signing memorandums of understanding and secrecy agreements, typically considered a prerequisite for accessing classified material before a new administration assumes office. But to hell with all of that, I guess. Instead, Trump's transition team has been focused on conducting its own internal vetting of candidates for top administration jobs. The delay in vetting candidates for clearances also impacts the timing of classified briefings for incoming administration officials, according to the sources familiar with the process. While Trump will have authority to override any vetting concerns and grant access to sensitive material once he takes office, he won't be able to do so until he is sworn in on January 20th. So, if Trump's team continues to skirt the vetting process, those tapped for key roles wouldn't be able to receive briefings until then. Not that they care. The Trump team's lack of urgency when it comes to pre-vetting individuals for national security positions isn't surprising and is consistent with how he handled the transitions process after the 2016 election. Trump's team was ill-prepared for taking over in 2017, so the current lack of interest in participating in the vetting process is par for the course, maybe, one source added. Submitting individuals who have current access to classified materials or were previously vetted could help move the process along, while those with no government experience will take some time. Trump's pick of Representative Mike Waltz, it is Waltz, huh? The National Security Advisor, is one such example. All right, so we have that one on the record. Let's jump around a bit more and see if we can't get to some of the other material I have set aside here. What is this one? Okay. That's part of the Peter Thiel and Elon Musk tale. So we'll bring that one to you a little bit later. Yes. Some developments in the legal world, just to sort of remind you of what else is circulating out there, not in terms of nominations to the DOJ, although that will probably bear on how some of these things pan out, but the world of civil lawsuits, and I guess a couple of criminal claims along the way. Some of these things we've mentioned already, but just to sum up again, Columbia Journalism Review, from a journalistic perspective, collects the legal activity from Trump world targeting the journalistic world. Trump threatens the New York Times, Penguin Random House as well, over critical coverage, and then a few others along the way. The legal letter follows complaints aimed at CBS News, The Washington Post, and the Daily Beast, who's just pleased to be here. I'm in good company, says the Daily Beast. This is Lachlan Cartwright for Columbia Journalism Review, just published yesterday. Goes something like this. The letter, addressed to lawyers at the New York Times and Penguin Random House. That's not, they didn't send it to, this is like Four Seasons Landscaping. Rudy Giuliani did it, and he sent it to a penguin at a random house. And that's why it never really got to the right place. But the letter addressed to the lawyers there arrived a week before the election. Attached was a discursive 10-page legal threat, sort of, from an attorney for Donald Trump, who may or may not be an assistant deputy attorney general at this point, that demanded, and why not fix this figure on everything, $10 billion in damages for, quote, false and defamatory statements contained in articles by Peter Baker, Michael Schmidt, Suzanne Craig, and Russ Buettner. It singles out two stories at the New York Times, co-authored by Buettner, do I pronounce that correctly, and Craig, that related to their book on Trump and his financial dealings, entitled Lucky Loser, How Donald Trump Squandered His Father's Fortune and Created the Illusion of Success, released on September 17th. I can't believe that. That could impact the election. Why did you do that? It also highlighted an October 20th story headlined, For Trump, A Lifetime of Scandals Heads Toward a Moment of Judgment, by Peter Baker. And an October 22nd piece by Schmidt entitled, As Election Nears, Kelly Warns Trump Would Rule Like a Dictator. Now, there was a time, this is a quote from the letter, there was a time long ago when the New York Times was considered the newspaper of record. The letter, a copy of which was reviewed by CJR, reads, Those halcyon days have passed. That's the word they know, the modifier they can stick before days. That makes us sound intelligent. Let's use that. It accuses the Times of being, quote, a full-throated mouthpiece of the Democratic Party. Oh, by the way, if that was the case, you're fired. We need a better mouthpiece, one that will actually tell people that Trump is terrible. But it accuses them of being a full-throated mouthpiece of the Democratic Party that employs industrial-scale libel against political opponents. The letter is signed by the president-elect lawyer, Edward Andrew Pultzik. I haven't heard of him being promoted into the government yet, but maybe that's still coming. He is, according to one online biography, based in Palm Beach, near Trump's Pervalago sex dungeon, but its language so often resembles Trump's as to be indistinguishable. I don't think he knows the word halcyon, though. It has not been previously reported, but came as part of a wave of other litigation from other former and future president that emerged around the same time. The Times responded to the letter on October 31st. Happy Halloween, they said. Referring Pultzik to Penguin Random House for claims against the book, and stating that it stood by its reporting, according to a person familiar with the situation. A spokesperson for the Times declined to comment. A representative for PRH, Penguin Random House, did not respond to a request for comment. Also, on Halloween, Pultzik, on behalf of Trump, sued CBS News anyway, alleging that a 60 Minutes interview with his rival for the presidency, Vice President Kamala Harris, had been edited to help her. He seeks, you'll never guess, $10 billion in damages. Curiously, he's pursuing these damages in a Texas jurisdiction that has only one judge. Yeah, you know where that is. Of course, it's the Northern District of Texas, Amarillo Division, where Matthew Kaczmarek is the only judge, and he'll handle the case. CBS says it will vigorously defend the lawsuit and has dismissed it as completely without merit. The same day, The Washington Post was the target of a 6-page complaint made to the Federal Election Commission, alleging that the paper made illegal in-kind contributions to Harris's campaign over promoted stories. They wrote nice things about her and terrible things about me. That should have been reported as a campaign contribution, and it wasn't. I charge you with the campaign finance violation, which I've just been convicted of 34 times over in New York. Every Republican accusation, of course, is a confession. The Post maintains the claim is without merit. On November 5th, lawyers representing Trump campaign co-chief Chris Lasivita sent a 4-page letter to the Daily Beast demanding a correction and retraction over a series of articles that alleged Lasivita had, quote, raked in, because he did, $22 million to help get Trump elected. The Daily Beast added an editor's note to its reporting that read, based on a further review of FEC records, the correct total is $19.2 million. The Beast regressed the error. The article has also been updated to make clear that payments were to Lasivita's LLC, not to Lasivita personally, the note stated. Okay. That did not satisfy Lasivita and his attorney, Mark Garagos, I don't know, you tell me, who sent another legal letter to the Daily Beast on November 12th demanding a retraction of their correction. All right. The editor's note in that article clarifying that $22 million went to Lasivita's LLC and not to him personally does not remedy the overall messaging of the story, which depicts Lasivita as deceptively pocketing campaign money for his own personal gain, and that he was and is on the verge of being fired because of it. It states, a spokesman for the Daily Beast declined to comment. The drumbeat of legal threats signals a potentially ominous trend for journalists during Trump's second term in office. Litigation is costly and time-consuming. Most news organizations will look to settle rather than face months, more likely years, of discovery and depositions, plus significant legal fees. It really has a mental chilling effect to be under a microscope like that. Ann Champion, a partner at Gibson Dunn, who has represented CNN, Jim Acosta, Mary Trump, and Brian Karam in legal matters involving Donald Trump alone, has said in an interview, it is both conscious and unconscious. Journalists at smaller outlets know very well that the costs for their organizations to defend themselves would mean bankruptcy. Even journalists at larger outlets don't want to burden themselves or their employees with lawsuits. It puts another layer of influence into the journalistic process, she said. Good point there. The letter to the Times alleges that the newspaper had every intention of defaming and disparaging the world-renowned Trump brand that consumers have long associated with a lot of things, but not really. But this is the ones they claim. Excellence, luxury, and success in entertainment, hospitality, and real estate, among many other industries, as well as falsely and maliciously defaming and disparaging him as a candidate for the highest office in the United States. Given the long list of well-known and historic business achievements by President Trump and his family, it says, President Trump's remarkable business, literary, media, and real estate achievements, and the fact that President Trump and his life story are the epitome of the American dream, and what it means to be an American patriot, as well as his lifelong support for America's men and women in uniform, which he has never done, these defamatory statements are all the more despicable in their falsity. There's no way he wrote that letter, of course. This letter lists 50 businesses, projects, and brands that Trump has built, transformed, established, and revitalized, noting that it can be accurately and fairly stated, no it can't, that President Trump built much of New York City's famed skyline. What? No. It also lists 23 books he has authored, which he hasn't, and 30 history-making media appearances, including, by the way, just so you know we're serious, WrestleMania 5, the romantic comedy Ghosts Can't Do It. I've never heard of that one. I'm going to rent it. 1989, in case you're wondering. Donald Trump, real estate tycoon, ! And there's no colon in that one. It's just Donald Trump, real estate tycoon, ! What is that? It's a video game. From 2002, super popular. Everyone was playing it, right? And, of course, an appearance on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air in 1994. I can't believe they put that in the letter. But maybe he was trying to make a point about Kamala Harris not putting McDonald's in her resume. It takes issue with reporting from Buettner and Craig. Is there more about this? I can't believe it. Why not wind up with that? But it takes issue with those guys about Trump's time as a star of The Apprentice, which had alleged a high degree of stage management around his appearances. Those appearances remain, the letter said, quote, one of the president's most well-known achievements, in addition to his decades of magnificent real estate achievements and winning the presidency on the first try, which is not a thing that you say unless you're 12. Thanks solely to President Trump's sui generis charisma, wow, and unique business acumen, it continued. The show represented the cultural magnitude of President Trump's singular brilliance, wow, which captured the zeitgeist of the early 21st century. Phew. The letter cites harm to the value of Trump Media, the firm listed under the abbreviation DJT. If not for the actions of the Times, it said the stock would likely be even higher now than it is, which is the toilet. After Trump sued the journalist Tim O'Brien for libel over his 2005 book, Trump Nation, The Art of Being the Donald, Trump said that he had, quote, spent a couple of bucks on legal fees, and they spent a whole lot more. I did it to make his life miserable, which I'm happy about. That's the quote. The lawsuit was dismissed in 2009, and the decision was affirmed on appeal in 2011. It's also the source of a lot of really good information, and I think it's the case that everybody points to every time he sues somebody, and then people on social media say, wow, I can't wait for discovery. The discovery in that case was a revelation, and something that Trump has wanted to avoid ever since, but just pretends that it never happened. All right, let's see. As I was reading through this, I said, oh, you know what I want to read next? And I, made mental note of it, and then, in one ear and out the other. Except it didn't go in one ear. It just lived in there like a brain worm in Robert Kennedy's skull. And never made it out again. What was it that we were... I think I was just amazed at the listing of his supposed accomplishments, including all of these television and video game credits. I really was amazed by all of that, but now I can't remember what it was. So, all right, back into Pocket. Let's browse and see if I can remind myself either right away or along the way to the next, entry in today's reading. Let's see. Well, there was this one. Let's see. News yesterday via social media, because that's the way everything moves. Elon Musk, in his unofficial / official / nobody knows role as in the non-Department of Government Efficiency, has done something interesting with it. He wants to staff it up, but, again, it's unclear whether he's in the government, not in the government, whatever. And here's an example of it. Now, ordinarily, I don't love reporting on what the Midas Touch organization people are reporting. Sometimes they're on point, and sometimes it seems like garbage. But this is a good point, if one that will be quickly ignored. So the on Twitter, which is, of course, owned by Elon Musk, they now have created an account for what they call the Department of Government Efficiency. Yes, we've been over it. Don Moynihan is 100% correct. It's not a department. You shouldn't call it one. But he's just going to do it. The more we say he shouldn't do it, the more he will do it just to troll. But at any rate, he's given himself an account as the Department of Government Efficiency, which he can do because he owns the platform. In addition, he's given the account a gray check mark, which is a thing that they created along the way when he started selling the blue check marks and you couldn't tell whether it meant anybody was verified or not. Government entities he wanted to mark differently, and he gave those gray check marks. So, of course, now, is this a department? No, it's not. If anybody else was claiming it was one and they went to Twitter and asked for a gray check mark, would they get it? Well, if they're friends of Elon Musk, yes. But, before then, if they had the same regime before he owned it, they would have, of course, said, no, that's not a government entity. We're not going to mark it with a check mark that makes it look like a government entity. That would be horrific. We would never know who the hell is speaking to us, and we kind of wanted that for our platform. Elon Musk does not. So he tells his own company, grant the gray check mark to my fake creation and just label this as a government entity that's speaking. I mean, it's on a par certainly with forging electoral college votes, right? This isn't a real thing, but I wish it was. Well, let's just make it that thing and see if we can fool Mike Pence into declaring it to be that thing. Now we don't have to depend on Mike Pence. Elon Musk does the whole thing. This is now hereby, according to Twitter, that, reliable arbiter of all things official, this is now a government entity. So that's just one layer of the corruption here. What are they doing? Midas Touch points out this X account here has been given a gray check mark verifying it as an official government account, which it isn't. And here's what he's doing. He's allegedly trying to staff this thing, which isn't a department, with people who will do the actual work. Donald Trump says, I'm going to let Elon Musk personally review the whole government and advise me on slashing government waste. Elon Musk's first instinct here is, I'm going to get somebody else to figure out what's government waste. And then I'll say, this thing is government waste. I am a genius. All right. So he needs staffers for this thing, and I think we all figured he wasn't going to do the work himself. Fine. Here's the advertisement to, look for applicants for the job. It reads this way. The Department of Government Efficiency allegedly tweets, we are very grateful to the thousands of Americans who have expressed interest in helping us at DOGE. We don't need more part-time idea generators. Everybody's an idea man. Give me $1 million. We need, ready for this, super high IQ, small government revolutionaries willing to work 80 plus hours per week on unglamorous cost cutting. And by the way, it later turns out that we also offer no compensation for this. 80 plus hours a week, unglamorous cost cutting, super high IQ. If that's you, jump off a building. If that's you, DM this account with your CV. Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy will review the top 1% of applicants. And god damn, is there so much wrong with this. Not the least of which is that Midas Touch guys point out is, again, one, they give it a gray check mark and try to pretend, therefore, that it's a government entity. And 2, these days, apparently on Twitter, if you want to DM somebody, this fake government entity accepts resumes only by DM, but apparently the DMs are only open to verified X users. That is to say, those who pay Elon Musk and Twitter for the right to display that blue check mark. That's the requirement for your CV to go through in applying for what's alleged to be a government job. Again, a huge violation of everything. But doubly a grift for Elon Musk. If you want to apply for this job, which I'm not going to pay you for, and credit for which I will grab from you, and it's unglamorous to begin with, you also need to pay me $8 a month just to get your CV to me. Then you could start unpacking, well, gee whiz, you need super high IQ people. I didn't realize that. Now, how many super high IQ people are going to say, yeah, you know what I need in my life? 80 plus hours per week of unglamorous, uncompensated work for which all the credit will be taken by Elon Musk. But is there any real hope of their getting those resumes? Well, one, sure, but good luck with getting people to self-sort by super high IQ. There's the business opportunity for you. In addition to, I'm going to have to start a private investigating company that doesn't do any investigations, but that will give you a report that looks like you're approved for security clearance. $100 million. Just give me one of those. And then, I guess the other thing to do is to start an online IQ testing service that just will tell you you're super high IQ so you can go ahead and apply for this thing. So, no word on what IQ you're supposed to have before you apply, for one thing. And also, of course, nothing quite says down with the elites, as the newspaper guys are saying is the meaning behind the Trump victory and the Trump administration. Nothing says down with elites like, hey, send us your resume, and Elon and Vivek themselves will review the top 1% of applications from those of you who are already super high IQ. So high IQ that you're willing to do stupid work for no reason and no money. Now, who would apply for those things? Will there be applicants? Yes, they will, because it's really a screening thing for working for Elon Musk or Vivek Ramaswamy. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So, as I ran out of time on our way out to the break, I realized, well, of course, it's really a mechanism for applying to work for Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. They've just said it is. But they don't mean, I don't mean at the Department of Government Efficiency or whatever the hell this thing is. We got to come up with a terminology that doesn't reinforce this stupid facade. But I mean, I think this is an application for private sector employment with those guys, if they even have jobs to offer, but doesn't really matter right now. This is for the ambitious types who, for whatever reason, good or not, believe they are super high IQ, to make applications and say, well, I'm willing to do 80 plus hours a week of unglamorous work for, I don't know, 3 to 6 weeks. And then afterwards, I expect to be rewarded with a vice presidency at Tesla or SpaceX or something like that. I mean, I wouldn't bet on it, but, it's not impossible. Some people will probably get that at some point. But, I mean, it's just another layer of the corruption. We get to also use this as free HR screening paid for by the government somehow. And but it's executive recruitment for our private operations. Anyway, speaking of Elon Musk, as we were, maybe this is a good time to roll out what Brian Henry sent to us. And let me make sure I've got some of these things lined up. What he sent us, and then immediately refuted in a way. He sent us a piece of his own. Just his own musings on the relationship between Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, which he saw as, I think from a very interesting perspective, as a sort of competition between the two. I'll let him explain it to you, but then he also says, so no sooner did I send it to you than I saw this contradictory article, which has a totally different explanation for what's going on here. But I thought this was solid, really, and ought to be considered alongside the reporting as an alternative explanation for what's going on between the two guys. Now, I had never read anything about their relationship, thank God, and I don't know if I want to anymore. But they seem to be pretty intimately tied up, not only with the administration now, but with one another. Oh, and before I dive into this one, there was another thing which, oh boy, did I retweet it? Did I keep it? I don't know, but I'll blurt it out and then I'll scroll back and look for it while we're listening to Brian. But yeah, here it is. I just retweeted this thing from Stephen Gutowski, founder of The Reload, if you wanted to know about that, and a CNN contributor, and a firearms reporter and gun safety instructor, also a Phillies fan, in case you needed to get that information in there as well. I felt like I had to add it. Anyway, Stephen Gutowski, just, fun random guy on Twitter as far as I'm concerned, but has this question asked about Elon Musk. Is this dude just basically president now? What is this? He's reskeeting a bit from the New York Times here that comes along with their article. Breaking news, Elon Musk, a top advisor to President-elect Donald Trump, met with Iran's UN ambassador to discuss defusing Iranian-U.S. tensions during the next Trump term, two Iranian officials said. What does he have to do with anything in that respect? I don't know. Nothing. Did Trump say it was okay for him to go? I don't know. I guess we could read the article. We should take a look at it. I'll open it up just to keep it available. I don't want to delay any further getting to Brian's piece, but what happened here? I'm not really sure. Maybe we skim through it and set the table for Brian's read here. Elon Musk meets with the Iranian UN ambassador. The tech billionaire said it was reported to have discussed ways to diffuse tensions between Iran and the United States. Of course, we heard the news the other day that when Trump got on the phone with Zelensky from Ukraine, that he brought Musk with him. And that there was some discussions also without Trump between Musk and Putin. Like, what the hell's going on here? Farnaz Fashihi, I have no idea about the pronunciation of any of them, but Farnaz Fashihi, Fassihi, is the reporter at the New York Times. The New York Times reporter, people should know their names, but I don't. Elon Musk, a close advisor to President-elect Donald Trump, met with Iran's ambassador. You heard all of that and why. The Iranians said the meeting between Musk and Ambassador Amir Saeed Iravani lasted more than an hour. I'm sure he was unhappy about that. And was held at a secret location, because why not? The volcano lair, I guess. The Iranians, who spoke on condition of anonymity, it was the Iranians. Oh, but we don't know which one. I see. I gotcha. Because they were not authorized to discuss policy publicly. They're not authorized to do anything. You can't discuss anything in Iran, so that's not news. But they described the meeting as positive and good news. Yay. Asked whether there was such a session, Stephen, send me to prison immediately, Chung, Mr. Trump's communications director, gonna have to wait a couple of years for that one, said, we do not comment on reports of private meetings that did or did not occur. Okay. Caroline Levitt, transition spokeswoman for now, said that anything of blah, 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 everybody trusts Trump, he'll do whatever's necessary, so no confirmation one way or the other. Musk has emerged as the most powerful private citizen in the Trump transition and has sat in on nearly every job interview. During a call last week with Ukraine's President Zelensky, the president-elect handed the phone to the billionaire. Wow. Musk has played a key role in providing communications capability to Ukraine in the war with Russia. So when he decides to switch sides, what happens? An early direct meeting between a senior Iranian official and Mr. Musk raises the possibility of a change in tone between Tehran and Washington under the Trump administration, despite a charged history between the president-elect and Iran. One of the Iranian officials said it was Mr. Musk who had requested the meeting and that the ambassador picked the site. During the first term, Mr. Trump pulled the United States out of a 2015 nuclear accord between Iran and world powers, calling it a horrible one-sided deal that should never, ever have been made, and imposed tough economic sanctions on Iranian oil revenues and international banking transactions. He also, of course, ordered the assassination of a top Iranian general. Wasn't Hitler-y enough. Qasem Soleimani, killed in Iraq in 2020. In response, Iran's supreme leader banned any negotiations with the Trump administration, and Iranian officials vowed to avenge Mr. Soleimani's killing. Federal prosecutors said in a court filing last week that Iran had plotted to assassinate Mr. Trump before the election. Go ahead and take a meeting. But in the wake of Mr. Trump's election last week, Iran has been openly debating whether it can now reach a new deal, a new and more lasting deal with the United States. Many members of President Masoud, what's the last name of the Iranian president? Pezeshkians, maybe? Pezeshkian? I don't know the name of the president of Iran. But he's not supreme leader, so. Anyway, many members of his new government favor negotiating, arguing that Mr. Trump likes to make deals, and there may be an opportunity to get the sanctions lifted. Many in the conservative faction of Iran oppose engagement with Mr. Trump, so we'll just do it with Musk, I guess. And any negotiations or deal must be approved by the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It's not Khomeini, Khamenei. Yes, all right, I remember that much. All right, he is the supreme leader. Mr. Trump has been an avid supporter of Israel, you could say, which has been waging war on the Iranian-backed militias Hamas and Hezbollah since October 7th's attacks last year. On Thursday, on X, Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi, maybe, said, differences can be resolved through cooperation and dialogue. We agreed to proceed with courage and goodwill. Iran has never left the negotiating table on its peaceful nuclear program. Mr. Araghchi, it's A-R-A-G-H, Arag, C-H-I. So I'm saying Araghchi. Araghchi made the comments following a meeting in Tehran with Rafael Grossi, the head of the UN's atomic watchdog. Analysts said that for all the history of bad blood with Mr. Trump, the Iranians appeared to want to keep the door open for diplomacy. Trump, too, appears interested, insofar as he appears interested in anything, barely opening my puffy eyes long enough to look at it. Overall, everything is possible with Trump. That's true, said Ali Vaez, the Iran director, for the International Crisis Group, whatever that is. He appears to be interested in a deal with Iran, but some advisors, he said, may favor other approaches, among them increasing the pressure on Iran or bombing the ever-loving crap out of them. The two Iranian officials said that the meeting with Mr. Musk provided a workaround for Iran, allowing it to avoid sitting directly with an American official. I think, if he isn't one. Mr. Musk will, however, have an official role soon. He has been named as the co-director of a new government efficiency agency. One Iranian foreign ministry official said that the ambassador, Iravani, told Mr. Musk during the meeting that he should obtain sanctions exemptions from the Treasury and bring some of his businesses to Tehran. Iran's mission to the United Nations said it would not publicly comment on the meeting, but there you go. Another open door to a different angle of corruption. Here's an idea for you, Elon. Why don't you force Trump to force his Treasury Secretary to give, let's say, SpaceX and Tesla and X and maybe whatever businesses you want. Why don't you get special exemptions from Treasury to avoid the ban on doing business with us that sanctions bring, and then you and no other competitors from America can come here and make billions more dollars. Why don't you try that? So in other words, the Iranians' suggestion was, why don't you create a gigantic corruption scandal for the brand new administration? And he said, yeah, why don't I? Normally you say, well, you don't because you're going to cause problems for the administration. People will be investigated and charged with corruption and espionage. That's bad. But but have you met the Attorney General? So I guess that door's open now, too. I also saw earlier today, maybe more lead-in for Brian here. See if I can find it. It was another of the big accounts that everybody loves to follow, Pwn All the Things, who was saying about the Elon Musk situation, saying there's going to be a lot of those. DOGE won't be a real department. It'll be a non-governmental quasi-federal advisory panel, so it can do anything stories. And that's the way they'll report it, I'm sure. And A, that is all on purpose, and B, it doesn't matter. If Musk then, say, turns up in Belgium, for instance. Well, he's not really a government employee, so, Well, if he turns up in Belgium, will they greet him as a representative of the United States? Yes. How do we know this? He just turned up in somewhere in a secret location and said, I'm a representative of the United States. Will the UN ambassador from Iran please meet me and bribe me or give me a bribe idea? Yes. So they did. And he makes a couple other points along the way here. This structure isn't, LOL, they screwed up. We said it was a department, but we can't really create departments. No, they didn't screw up. It was something that they did so that he can, and they can, swap hats. It's governmental when they want it to be. I get to greet ambassadors and advise things that people with authority defer to me on, but non-governmental when they want it to be. For example, if there are Freedom of Information Act requests or staff civil service projections are to yes or no apply for the super high IQ people that they want to hire, for instance. It's the formal integration of the federal government with private industry, which is kind of one of the supporting legs of the definition of fascism, but whatever. A mechanism whereby you can both be the richest man in America, or the world for that matter, and run your business empire. And then when you're bored of that and you've run out of Diablo to play, go around the world and pretend to be King of America as well. A simple example to make the point he offers: a foreign government, for argument's sake, let's say China, or for that matter, now we could say Iran, wants to influence the U.S. It decides to influence a cabinet official, perhaps with a suitcase of money, or perhaps by choosing at what level to impose retaliatory sanctions on their electric vehicles, for instance. Is that a bribe? Part of the way you get government for the people is by insulating the people in government away from direct financial gain in the decisions that they recommend. That's why bribes are illegal. That's why corruption is bad. And it's why historically people in government had to leave business or hold their value in blind trusts. The entire point of this Doge, D-O-G-E, is to circumvent that mechanism, right? Just take it out of the way. Just like background checks. They're problematic. Get rid of them. Just like appointments and votes in the Senate. Problematic? Get rid of them. Separation between government and private business interests? Get rid of it. So that's why the relationship, such as it is, and however we might come to understand it, between guys like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel become important. Especially, remember, just rewind the clock a little bit, to the selection of J.D. Vance as the running mate. Widely reported to be a Peter Thiel production. It was Thiel that Vance went to work for, straight out of law school. Although he did do some legal practice at some point, but then he dumped that and said, this is boring. I'd rather try to become a billionaire playing with other people's money. Whose money should it be? Peter Thiel's money. So the question is, it looked for a while like Peter Thiel will be running this new government because he picked the vice presidential candidate. And Elon Musk, according to Brian's thinking, and I'll let you listen to him lay it out, is Elon Musk said, wait a minute, I'm much richer now. than Peter Thiel. Why don't I buy and control the government? Brian, please explain your thoughts on this subject.
Let's talk about Musk and Peter Thiel. I believe that we're seeing play out a competition between the two over control of the U.S. government. And it started when Peter Thiel maneuvered J.D. Vance into the VP position. Because if you remember back in about March of 2024, Elon said he wasn't going to take sides. He wasn't going to really place any money down to support either Trump or Biden at the time. And by mid-July, it looks like the writing's on the wall. Trump's going to win because Biden is so unpopular. The assassination attempt happens. He nominates J.D. Vance. So I think what happened is he saw, Musk that is, saw that Peter Thiel had maneuvered his way into the inner circle of the Trump campaign, and it was incumbent upon Musk to then utilize his resources to get that same sort of economic advantage that Peter Thiel was going to get. Because if you go back and read about Peter Thiel and Musk's past with X.com, way back when, not the current X.com, but his little online bank, Musk's online bank, and its competition with PayPal, which was run by Peter Thiel, they joined forces in order to take advantage of, cornering the market and get Yahoo to buy it, or I can't remember who, but it doesn't matter. They know each other. They don't like each other. Peter Thiel said that Musk is a showman and a fraud, and Musk said that Peter Thiel is a sociopath, and they just don't like each other. Oddly enough, they're both sort of rooted in South Africa, Musk more than Thiel. Thiel was just sort of there when he was a child. So they have kind of a similar upbringing, completely different outlook on life. I'm sure Peter Thiel was like, let's build those freedom cities, and he wants to go seasteading. And Elon Musk is just infatuated with his own, intelligence. He's arrogant, and he thinks he can fix things by breaking them. So he's just going to break everything and then show everybody that, hey, it's actually fine if everything's broken because he's doing fine, even though he's doing fine because he's got billions of dollars and everything being broken is actually terrible for everyone else. So remember, mid-July, Trump gets popped in Butler. J.D. Vance becomes the nominee. Like a week later, the VP nominee. Peter Thiel is now behind the scenes with Don Jr. and all his crypto bros with like Barron and stuff, really solidifying his influence over the Trump campaign, like a real Bush-Cheney relationship, because we know Trump is lazy. He doesn't like to do anything. And then Elon comes in and just dumps hundreds of millions of dollars through various like dark money super PAC type situations, and has now positioned himself as the wealthiest man in the world who is friends with Putin, because it's always still just Russia, and Ukraine. And he's now the shadow VP because he didn't want Thiel to get a leg up on him in that relationship with the U.S. government. Because, once again, Musk still survives on subsidies to SpaceX. Peter Thiel survives on subsidies through like Palantir and stuff like that. So, one's a spy and one's a rocket scientist, ostensibly. And, we're both now, I guess we're beyond the pale. We've jumped the shark. We're through the looking glass. I don't know what analogy or metaphor you want to use. Like, we are in a oligarchic struggle. We are on the sidelines of an oligarchic struggle to control the United States. And it's interesting, not optimal, but, that's where we're at. So, anyway, those are just my thoughts. I have done almost zero research. I'm not qualified to do that. I've just been sort of casually reading things, and this is what came to mind, and I finally thought I would just record something and send it in to you. So thank you.
All right, and thank you. Yeah, Brian, I think that's an interesting observation about these two guys, and I had not heard anything about their relationship. And then, as I said so, or even before I said so, in response in email, Brian followed up by saying, well, I'm almost immediately wrong in one piece that I've seen. Now that he's taken the time to do some research, he immediately says, well, for instance, here in Real Clear Politics, there is an interview here, and God, I really would never want to sit through this, but I guess there's a transcript, and I certainly don't want to hear the voices. Peter Thiel being interviewed by Barry Weiss. Oh my God. Nothing I could think of I'm less interested in listening to. But because this allegation is made here that the two of them can't stand each other, Well, one, do you have a basis for that? Yes, there's a basis for that too, and we can look at it. But there's also basis for thinking, well, maybe that's not quite it. But I guess where he was coming from, Brian says, is, among other things, there's this San Francisco, the sfgate.com entry here from where is this? The reporting is from entrepreneur.com, though it's available here in this sfgate aggregating site here that I guess is for the San Francisco Examiner or something, or is that the paper out there? I forget every once in a while. And whenever they don't identify themselves in the URL, I get annoyed because, well, who's doing this? It's a newspaper consortium and, you don't know which one's taking the lead. Doesn't matter. This is Dorothy Cucci, I guess, Cucci, with an article entitled Elon Musk thinks Peter Thiel is a sociopath. So were you wondering, well, Brian, why do you say that Elon Musk thinks Peter Thiel is a sociopath? And the answer is because Dorothy Cucci says that Elon Musk thinks Peter Thiel is a sociopath, and I have no reason to doubt it. But then he provides some reason to doubt it. So he's really he's covering his bases for the guy who did no research on this, right? And so Elon Musk thinks Thiel is a sociopath, and 6 other wild details about the billionaire's love-hate relationship, which ordinarily wouldn't make a goddamn bit of difference in the world, even though they're billionaires. But now they also have bought the United States government. So maybe we should look at this. Thiel and his allies conspired against Musk and replaced him as PayPal CEO while Musk was on his honeymoon, which I would say is a kind of a dick move, except, well, yeah, if both of the moving parts are dicks, it's going to be a dick move. So I don't know. Let's not choose sides. Let's just watch them fight. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk have known each other for decades, all the way back to when they combined their respective online banking companies, PayPal and X, before X was Twitter, in 2002. Since then, I guess what this means is Elon Musk just loves the letter X and thinks it's really cool. So he wants Twitter to be called X. He had an online banking system. He said that would be called X. It got absorbed and destroyed or whatever and went away. So the name was available to him. And when he started a space company, what should we call our space company? Space, and I love X, so SpaceX. Yeah. Anyway, since then, their relationship has seen plenty of ups and downs, and their net worths have grown by billions of dollars. In his new book, The Contrarian, Peter Thiel and Silicon Valley's Pursuit of Power, Max Chafkin takes a closer look at the complicated history of the two men who are in many ways polar opposites. Here are 7, not 6, but 7 surprising details about Musk and Thiel that provide a glimpse into their long and often fraught relationship. By the way, before I forget, another thing mentioned by Brian there, also of interest, and I think I probably have an article about it somewhere, just not going to rise to the level of getting included today, Barron and his involvement with crypto bros and his role in the campaign. He had one. He actually did have one. They were just, anytime crypto came up, Trump said, talk to my son Barron. He needs to give every one of his kids a job. And Barron apparently, 1, ran the crypto side of things, and 2, was the one, and this makes some sense, was the one that Trump went to ask which otherwise obscure and unknown to me, but wildly popular among the youngs, podcasts should I go on. And it was Barron who was like, yeah, Joe Rogan, you got to do that. Anyway, back to the Musk-Thiel thing, since I don't have the source at hand on the Barron thing. It's out there. I'll see if I can find it. But as between Thiel and Musk, 1, a source who spoke to both men said, that's not the best source in the world, but it's okay, said that Musk thinks Thiel is a sociopath and Thiel considers Musk a fraud, just as Brian said. Musk and Thiel, while longtime collaborators, are fundamentally opposites. Musk is considered an outgoing, eccentric risk taker, and Thiel is known as a cautious introvert. Whereas Thiel could be comically secretive, even among close friends, Musk was incapable of censoring himself, that's for sure. Here, have some of my semen. Just go ahead. That's a thing that he said. I didn't make that up. That's not me. That's the story about the way that Musk considers himself an extrovert. Okay. Whereas Thiel tended to think in terms of limiting risk, Musk was perpetually going for broke. All right, just before the break, let's see if we can squeeze in one or two more. Number 2 here, Musk crashed his $1 million McLaren with Thiel in the passenger seat. And that's really probably all you need to know about that one. Number 3, PayPal and X, Elon Musk's own online banking platform, merged in 2000 because Thiel was, quote, terrified of losing the business. As PayPal took significant losses in early years, Musk stepped in. He'd caught wind that his competitor might make a deal with Yahoo and didn't want X to be squeezed out, so he convinced Thiel to combine the two companies. But while Musk would be CEO, Thiel strategically placed loyal confidants, members of his so-called PayPal mafia, in the top positions there. And we'll continue with number 4 through 7 after this. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time, just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I was scrolling through, I may or may not have put aside this article that I was thinking of with Barron, but it was also about Barron's supposed best friend, who likewise was a, late teen, early 20s crypto bro type fan, and apparently he exerts an enormous amount of influence over Barron as well. And that's always great. And who knows who that kid is or where he comes from or what he's all about. But hey, who cares? It doesn't matter. We're not going to be doing any background checks on anybody anyway. So you can wonder all you want. Too bad. You're never going to find out. So let's see. The other items in the 7 surprising facts about this relationship between Peter Thiel and Elon Musk that might be of some interest. Number 4, Thiel and his allies conspired and overthrew Musk as PayPal CEO while he was on his honeymoon. So they didn't get along all that well. While Musk and his wife left on a 2-week vacation, I don't know which wife, he's had 18 of them, Thiel loyalists fed up with what they saw as an endless list of disasters caused by Musk's failed leadership. So why not, I don't know what to tell you about. I mean, if anybody's in a position to nip this thing in the bud and say maybe he shouldn't become the world's wealthiest person and now the world's most powerful person, what can I do to stop that? But I guess while Thiel is critical of a string of failures by Elon Musk, I guess this is a huge failure by Peter Thiel to actually be able to, steer the outcome here. He's not as powerful and omnipotent as he thinks. Anyway, while he was on his vacation, I guess they, frustrated by what they saw by Musk's failed leadership, Thiel loyalists threatened to quit the board if he didn't agree to make Thiel CEO. Musk told Chafkin that he eventually decided to forgive Thiel, but implied that he couldn't fully trust him again. Okay. Number 5 here is the 2 billionaires each spent all or part of their childhoods in South Africa before landing at Stanford University. Okay. Before they took over Silicon Valley, the two men came from similar roots. This clearly was must have been what Brian reviewed before offering his further thoughts. Musk was born in South Africa and lived there until college. Thiel's family relocated there for a few years when he was a child. Musk originally planned on getting a PhD in physics at Stanford, but dropped out to start Zip2, a business directory on the web that functioned as an online version of the Yellow Pages. Thank God. What we need here is an online version of the Yellow Pages. The genius idea that first launched the world's richest man. Why don't we take something that we have and put it online? Okay. And also it was really the focus of what became the biggest company online ever, Google, search. But I'm going to do search different and better. Okay. You're the world's richest man now. Well, anyway, meanwhile, Thiel studied law, dreaming of a Supreme Court clerkship, but was ultimately rejected after interviews with Kennedy and Scalia. Wow. Didn't make the cut, huh? Number 6, Musk said that Thiel refused to invest in Tesla, partially because of his skepticism about climate change, which I am curious how that's going to work out as between Trump and Musk. It doesn't really matter that it be logically consistent. Musk, obviously, I think, used to, anyway, believe in climate change is a real thing. Maybe now he's changing his mind. Anyway, when Musk was trying to get his electric car company, Tesla Motors, worth over $800 billion by 2020 off the ground, Thiel said no to investing. He doesn't fully buy into the climate change thing, said Musk. Musk isn't known for taking rejection well, Chefkin said, and Thiel's refusal worsened their already tense relationship. It's interesting. As investments go, the business genius that the central person in some people's view, that we must have involved in everything, not, okay, if it's not Elon Musk, it should be Peter Thiel. We'll let him, he should pick who runs for vice president, because he's got business sense. Hey, you want to be an early investor in Tesla and make $1 bazillion? No, not interested. Do you think climate change is real? No, not interested. Do you, think Elon Musk is the way to go with all this stuff? No, I don't. Don't trust him. Okay, but pick our vice president. All right. I mean, I'm not certain why that even happened. Number 7, Thiel was instrumental in SpaceX's success, which, I guess that's something he can point to and say, I did that. Even though their relationship was on the rocks following the PayPal coup and Tesla investment refusal, Thiel supported Musk's aerospace company, albeit reluctantly, in its early stages. His $20 million investment helped keep the company afloat after a third botched rocket launch in 2008. 1 month later, SpaceX reached orbit. So, good background information. But as I said, he also offers this from Real Clear Politics, which, if we can stomach it, is a transcript posted by Tim Haynes. Thanks for posting it, Tim. Over at Real Clear Politics. Peter Thiel, what does he have to say? If Trump could not defeat the machine, quote unquote, the machine, it would prove that the machine was unbeatable. This is Thiel talking to Barry Weiss about why he decided, I guess, to get involved in politics this time around, which brings us back to some of the things that Brian mentioned in his musings. That I wanted to pause and jump in with, but I just thought it would be better to roll the thing. Musk, it was mentioned that in March of 2024, he's occupying the position of, I'm not going to get involved very much. But then Thiel does jump in, and Musk says, I guess I got to be part of it. But I'm just sort of reminding everybody that there was a time when the New York Times and others did Musk the courtesy of saying, gosh, it's hard to pin down Elon Musk's politics. He's just staying neutral. He just doesn't, it's hard to pin him down. It's hard to pigeonhole him. And then that was this year. And before the end of the year, he's now fully invested in the Trump campaign, fully invested in what is now going to be the Trump administration, maybe occupies a government position, paid for the entirety of the campaign, is meeting with Zelensky and Iranian ambassadors on behalf of Trump. I mean, could everything go out of the window faster? Anyway, and then there was also, by the way, I thought this was I liked Brian's observation that what would change Musk's mind to dive in so deeply, so quickly? And the answer is a competition between them, but not just because, I hate Thiel, but rather because if there's a shadowy, secretive, behind-the-scenes billionaire funding Trump will listen to that person. And the two of them seem to be in competition pretty frequently, not just for control of everything, but, for the dollars, what they're supposed to be in competition for. Basically, Musk is able to recognize that Thiel is now in a position to scoop up massive amounts of government dollars for himself in the form of subsidies. I will advise the new Trump administration to do the following things and make the following investments and award the following contracts, and they're all to me. And Musk says, well, they should all be to me. I am in a position to pour 10 times the money that Thiel can pour into this thing in exchange for being able to steer those things to me. I might not even be right now in the businesses that Thiel wants to steer government money to, but I can be because I have $300 billion. I'll buy a competitor. I may even buy Thiel's thing so I can siphon the money to me. So then it becomes important, I guess, at some point to know, why did Thiel even decide to get interested in politics anyway? Or rather, what's the cover story besides the ability to steer government contracts to myself? And he has one, because he's a super brain genius, and it can't be as lowly and dirty as stealing all the money. I got to have a political science theory. Who's credulous enough to believe that there's a political science theory behind it? Barry Weiss. So, Barry Weiss from the Free Press, whatever that is, speaks to Palantir and PayPal founder Peter Thiel about his influence on the campaign and how counter elites have risen to challenge the liberal status quo. Not clear from that whether he means people who aren't elite and are therefore counter elites, or do we mean a different set of elites? I mean, the fact that they're all billionaires leads you to believe they're just different set of elites, right? Counter elites. Maybe he's being honest about that. Trump's win, quote, exploded the lie of identity politics, he said, because, of course, he could never be involved in identity politics. He's a super brain genius. Only dumb people are involved in identity politics, but doesn't everybody need to know his identity in order to know where the checks should be sent? The identity politics is, I identify with me and my bank account. That's identity politics, too. But anyway, if you believe that people cannot listen to reason, and it's all subject to these sub-rational factors like your race or your gender or your sexual orientation or something like this, then nobody would be able to change their mind. You exploded the lie of identity politics. I see. I don't think there is room for individual thought left on the left. This intellectual straitjacket, we are just not allowed to have ideas, even if you agree with 80%. It's never enough. You have to be 100%. Of course, the invented straw man here. They're very upset about the possibility that there might be such a thing in somebody's mind somewhere, even though they're not necessarily influential on the left or anywhere else. So here's the things that they say to one another. Little clips of, I guess, their conversation. 2020 was the fluke, says Thiel. I think the Hollywood movie term is retcon, retroactive continuity. Oh, I always wondered what retcon means. I just figured that's filling in your history with a backhoe, but okay. Like if a popular character dies in an avalanche, but people want him back somehow, they find a way for him to survive and bring him back. So we have to tell a story of what happened in the last 8 years. If Harris had one, I think it's transcribed. It's if Harris had won, W-O-N. They wrote O-N-E. If Harris had won, the story would be that 2016 was the fluke. We paid for it, and liberalism is basically fine, and we can go back to the somewhat brain-dead but comfortable Obama consensus. That's the way he views the whole thing. It seems to me that the straightforward, retroactively continuous story is that 2020 was the fluke, like the one where Trump lost. And I guess now they have a claim on that. It was the last time where this ancient regime with an ancient president, Biden, I guess, could dodder over the finish line one last time. So his view of things is, and again, this is just like, it's a razor thin margin, just like we say, Trump will claim a huge landslide mandate, but the numbers don't actually bear it out. But if the press says, yeah, he's got a huge landslide mandate, they will get out of the way for him doing things that they would never get out of the way of for Biden, who, no, he won in a squeaker. No, his was actually pretty powerful mandate and landslide. But depending on how you frame it. But now it's, well, had Trump lost, he, defeated twice in a row, he's got no juice. There's no there in MAGA. Would be one way that things could frame it. But I think we all know that it wouldn't be like that. It would still be, well, we're still going to their diners to find out why they still support Trump and printing it all through the Harris administration. But Thiel theorizes, no, the actual opposite of all of that is what was really going to happen. And we were in danger of finding out that the real fluke was 2016. But with him winning again in 2024, everyone can say, no, the fluke was 2020. Thiel says Elon Musk convinced him. Interestingly enough, this is where it becomes contradictory. I thought they were at each other's throats. But Thiel says in this that Elon Musk convinced him that losing the 2024 election would allow Democrats to consolidate power into one-party state. Sure, why not? I didn't want to believe Elon when he said this, so I texted him and I told him, I hadn't believed you when you said this at first. I think this is because psychologically, I don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe the country is so far gone that I would have to leave or something. But who cares? You're a billionaire. You can go anywhere, right? Just decamp to Abu Dhabi. He didn't want to have to, though. The sense in which I felt that he was correct was if Trump, with much better substance, oh my goodness, much better on so many things, if Trump could not win in 2024 against the machine, then the machine would always win. As opposed to it being a fluke too, but it's a fluke. No, it's a machine. Even he doesn't know, right? So even he's telling you the framing could go either way. I don't know, and I'm a super brain genius, but we're this close to the machine winning forever because it almost won once. Anyway, and if the machine always wins, then you no longer have a democracy. And you certainly no longer have a democratic process within the Democratic Party. This is their complaint. Watch this, right? We can always debate the election shenanigans in November 2020. The far more extraordinary thing was in March of 2020. So, more amazing than the fact that they were forging electoral college certificates in his mind is, well, explain this to me. How does in March 2020 Biden comes in 4th or 5th in Iowa and New Hampshire and then somehow got rammed through South Carolina and all the other candidates drop out? There was this extremely non-democratic primary in the Democratic Party in 2020 that led to an even less democratic process in which Biden was replaced with Harris. They're still harping on that. I mean, I understand that one anyway. It does seem like, oh, what happened to the whole primary process thing? Well, we had it, and Biden won it, and then various circumstances, he drops out. The party has to select a new nominee. They go with the person that the entirety of the country very recently had ratified as the person who should take over if President Biden steps down or is otherwise incapacitated. And they followed the rule. But we didn't have primaries. Yeah, I know. We did have primaries in 2020, and we chose who should come next. And the answer was Kamala Harris, and then she came next. What's the problem? But for him, existential crisis, I guess. But this comes from a place where he views the time they actually did have primaries. Yeah, but I didn't like the guy who won. And it looked like he lost in Iowa and New Hampshire. Yeah, Iowa and New Hampshire, increasingly irrelevant to Democrats. That's why they stopped putting them first, because the voting population even among primary voters in Iowa and New Hampshire, just not representative of where the rest of the country is. So we chose South Carolina to really kick things off from there on. And that's baffling to him. But they've always gone first. Yeah, well, I thought you were about breaking things and change. Yeah, well, that doesn't help me in this argument, so I'm not. Well, anyway, if the machine could defeat Trump, he was saying, I thought it was reasonable that it could gain even more power and somehow be unbeatable, and the country would become like California, a one-party state. Is that a reasonable conclusion to reach? If the machine could defeat Trump, wow. Again, I mean, he did win, and that's unfortunate, and there's various reasons for it, and we'll talk with Greg more about that next week, I'm sure. But he was like the worst candidate in history. Was the machine defeating Trump? Or 5 days before he needs the votes of millions of Puerto Ricans, he, has a guy come on stage and call him garbage. He's running the worst campaign. He's dancing rather than holding town halls. Worst candidate, worst campaign ever. Oh my God, imagine if the machine could defeat him. But, he's just said he's coming at this from the perspective of, but Trump is so much better on the substance, which is so obviously false. But he's willing to say it anyway. So, there's a little bit more. Let's run through some of this. Here are several other more notable clips from the conversation, starting with his support for tariffs on Chinese goods. This is an interesting observation. I thought this might be worth pondering. What does he think about the tariff situation? He says, if you did 60% across the board tariffs on China, it would probably be very, very bad for Chinese companies and China. Thiel said. It would be only mildly bad for U.S. consumers because an awful lot of stuff would get shifted away from China. This is their excuse for why tariffs across the board and exceptionally high tariffs on China wouldn't be disastrous for American consumers, is that Chinese producers would, or I guess American importers would import goods from elsewhere rather than goods from China. And that would be bad for Chinese companies. But it, ignores the realities of everything else, including Chinese companies simply saying, all right, I'm Chinese personally, but my company, which is incorporated in China, will now be incorporated in Vietnam, Mongolia, you pick it, but anywhere else in the country and the world, so that it doesn't have to be labeled made in China and can face lower tariffs. Is it still Chinese owned? Yes. Is all the money still going back to Chinese people? Yes. Is the Chinese government the type of government that would be in a position to take a percentage of that or all of it, if necessary, regardless of where these things are being manufactured? Yes. Has China spent the last 2 decades building infrastructure around the world that would enable them to relocate manufacturing capacity to other locations other than China and still get their goods to market as quickly as ever? Yes. So does that ignore the reality of everything? Yes, it does. Will Chinese people still be getting the money and the Chinese government still taking what they want from it? Yes. So is it nonsensical? I'm afraid yes, I think it is. But he thinks it's not because, we'll be boosting workers and producers and capital owners in Vietnam and, you take your pick. Wherever the Silk Road project has been building transportation infrastructure around the world in China's name. Those goods will be manufactured there. And in some cases, great. Some local workers have to be local to make the stuff in those locations. Unless, of course, you just lie and say, the Chinese government sanctions, relabeling this stuff in some way. And what are you going to do about it if they do? Nothing much. Anyway, Thiel says if you shift manufacturing from China to Vietnam, that hurts China, unless the Chinese manufacturers are the ones who build the plants in Vietnam. But anyway, never mind that, because that's an impossibility. Nobody could ever think of something brain genius like that. Anyway, he says it's maybe mildly negative for American consumers. It's really good for Vietnam, but in this geopolitical calculus, that seems very much in the American interest, he said, except that it isn't because it empowers and validates the Silk Road projects and leaves us with that much less soft power around the globe. Anyway, then he goes on to say, I like Star Wars, so in Star Wars, see, Democrats are the Empire and we're the awesome Rebel Alliance. He doesn't really offer much information as to why that would be a valid comparison, but it is one, and he likes Star Wars. Let's see. Then, I don't know, I guess there's a little bit more, and we can look at that. I don't know. He says, today's science, somehow, has become more dogmatic than the Catholic Church in the 17th century. if we fast forward to 2024 and you asked scientists, where is science too dogmatic? And 2024, we're not fast forwarding, we're in it. And where are people too skeptical? I think there would be a long list of issues where they'd say there are climate change skeptics, vaccine skeptics, Darwin skeptics, round earth skeptics. People who are too skeptical in ways that are undercutting science. If you ask those same scientists where they believe science itself has become too dogmatic, I don't think they could point to a single thing where they see science as being overly rigid. And doesn't that tell you that we have completely lost the sense of balance? No, and not by itself. Why? Well, tell me where you think science is too dogmatic. I really just don't think it is. Yeah, but if you can't tell me where you think it's too dogmatic, then haven't you lost balance? Not if science is actually real. No. Well, I think you have lost balance, and I have $1 billion. All right. Well, then we've lost balance. That's the conclusion, not only from him, but also from brain genius Barry Weiss. Okay. So what do I want to squeeze in before I leave for the weekend? It could be any one of 250 different things, including checking back in on Kevin Roberts, who I had forgotten to mention. We mentioned that he was... why did we bring him up again the other day? Right. Of course, he's the author of Project 2025 and all the terrible things that he was going to do, and we read a little bit about him and what a jackass he was. I forgot to mention that he was another dog killer. He was the guy who told everybody somewhere, wherever he was working, that he beat a dog to death with a shovel. Just putting it out there. Now, there's part of the Christy Nome story, having shot the dog. It's important to know that Kevin Roberts is a dog killer as well. The Guardian reporting that one back in when? September. Project 2025 mastermind allegedly told colleagues he killed dog with a shovel. Just in case you were wondering when we read about him the other day. Is that the guy that killed the dog with a shovel? Yes. Okay. So I thought maybe we could squeeze something in that you should probably spend some time reading over the weekend, because I don't know if we're going to finish it. I think not. But this, actually an old article, which has new meaning. It is a opinion essay from the New York Times, originally ran January 6th, 2022, a year after the infamous January 6th. It is from Peter Manso and John Grinspan, who do a lot of work with the Smithsonian, among other things. And here's the deal. It is 2086, he says. This is what American history could look like. And he knew this, going on 3 years ago now. And it's only more true. Just something to think about for the weekend. They write, it is noted at the top, this article is part of a collection on the events of January 6th, 1 year later. And there are other entries in this series, but theirs begins this way. The year is 2086. At an unveiling ceremony in the United States Capitol's Statuary Hall, visitors listened to august speeches about a dark day long ago when patriots fought to defend democracy. You know, all the things that they thought they were doing when they were really just charlatans. Not heroes, charlatans. Well, what if history enshrines them as heroes after all? That's the point here. The crowd breaks into applause as the cloth covering the new statue falls away. Marble megaphone aloft, headdresses and horns gleaming. The QAnon shaman of January 6, 2021 takes his place among the heroes of American history. If it seems far-fetched that a notorious insurgent could be given such a place of honor, the past begs to differ. When the Confederate President Jefferson Davis was imprisoned after the Civil War, rumored to have been dressed at the time of his arrest in his own outlandish costume, drag in fact, he was more reviled and mocked than any Capitol rioter, and his crimes were far more serious. His statue, though, joined George Washington's in the Capitol 65 years later. As curators at the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History, we are regularly confronted by hard physical evidence of just how slippery the past can be. Materials brought in by curators long ago take on unanticipated meanings. Objects that we've collected, which seem almost to speak for themselves when we catalog them, may find totally different use behind glass decades from now. It is chilling, but not impossible, to envision the signs screaming, "Stop the Steal," picked up on the garbage-strewn National Mall on January 7th, 2021, treated one day as patriotic treasures, displayed alongside the writing desk Thomas Jefferson used to draft the Declaration of Independence. I'm choking up here. Or the inkwell that Abraham Lincoln dipped into to compose the Emancipation Proclamation. When the mob first breached the halls of Congress, the bewilderment on their faces indicated that many had not planned to storm into history. And yet, as their allies have worked over the past year to minimize the assault, many of us have looked toward the future, hoping for some clarity on our chaotic era. When all is finally known, we tell ourselves there will be no disputing who was responsible for this singular attack on the workings of our democracy. Their names will live in infamy. History, we want to believe, will judge them harshly. History, however, may have other plans. Contrary to the mantra, it has no right or wrong side. A generation after secession, the renowned historian James Ford Rhodes declared, "The judgment of posterity is made up. It was an unrighteous cause in which the South defended by arms." At the very moment that the statues of Confederate generals were being placed on pedestals throughout the nation, Rhodes was wrong, not in his reading of the Confederacy, but in his faith in the judgment of posterity. Judging, it turns out, isn't history's strong suit. Notions of justice change radically over time, and they are not the reason we collect, preserve, or display objects from the past. To curators and historians, the evolving meaning of our objects is far more fascinating than whom they label as unrighteous. The collections of the Smithsonian contain, for instance, pikes from John Brown's failed slave rebellion in the South in 1859. At different moments since then, his pikes have symbolized a demented terrorist scheme for mass murder, a religious fanatic's fiery crusade,
from networksradio.com,
and a hero's lonely struggle for justice.
Listening to Kagro in the morning with David Waldman.
All right, well, there's much more to that one, and you might want to take a look at it yourself over the weekend, or you might want to kick back at this point and wait for Justice Putnam to take you through his Blue Moon Spirits Friday on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, gathering up all the stories that he's got for your attention from around the country and around the world. There's the rest of the world, you know. We'll see you next week.